Well, spring is the season for the all-American sport of baseball, and the time when Little League games spawn dreams of being in the big leagues. Well, twins David and Jason Benham fell in love with baseball as little boys, spurred on by their father's big dream.
I'm 2 minutes older. I'm an inch taller. I've been carrying him for 37 years. At least I could hit a curveball. Dude, you could not hit that curveball.
Many of us came to know the Benham brothers after they were fired from HGTV due to their biblical values. Getting thrust into a media controversy was not what David and Jason had in mind. But these former professional baseball players and nationally acclaimed entrepreneurs drew strength from an earlier time in their lives when God stepped in and blew them away with his faithfulness. In their memoir, Miracle in Shreveport, the brothers share how God made their lifelong dream a reality by working behind the scenes in a very special way.
Well, please welcome back to the 700 Club, David and Jason Benham. It's great to have you both here.
Thanks for having us.
Your book was such a fun read. I mean, I've interviewed you before, and I know some of the things that have happened in the more current years of your life, but it was fun to go back to your childhood with you.
Yeah, you're right. And, you know, the whole thing with HGTV, we drew strength from a story earlier in our lives, which is this one. We remember it covers a 20-year period from the ages of 5 to the ages of 25, where we saw God work together in such a way that actually blew us away.
Yeah, really, really miraculous. Your dad played such a significant role in your lives growing up, which is a huge blessing. Not a lot of kids have that. But let's go back to Texas, to the Little League years where you played, and your dad taught you 2 lessons during that time that really kind of anchored you, right?
Yes, absolutely.
Which lessons are these?
Jason has no clue.
Obviously, they landed.
You know, here's what's interesting. He always taught us to run through first base. You know, when you're a hitter and you hit a ball right back to the pitcher, you have a choice. Do you just kind of lollygag down first base and then run back to the dugout, or do you always run all the way through first base? He taught us that in Little League, and what's interesting is when HGTV, we ended up getting fired and all the cameras were gone, we still had 6 families that we were renovating houses for.
Oh, my God.
And we remembered that lesson, run through first base.
Wow.
We ran all the way through first base, finished those houses. Dad also taught us to serve, to be a servant leader, to clean up the dugout.
I was going to do that when you stole it from me. I remembered that, yes.
Take it, Jason.
One of the things that he did when we were in Little League, our dad, you know, David was usually a pitcher, I was catcher, and then we'd switch the next game. I'd pitch, he'd catch, and of course, nobody'd get a hit because we were so amazing. Not really. But our dad taught us, he said, leaders have to serve.
Yeah.
And what I want you boys to do is after every single game, I want you to clean up all the cups in the dugout. And we did that all the way through college, David and I.
Got a Gatorade in there.
I know, and peanut shells, for sure.
Exactly. You know, you also had something that happened repeatedly as you were growing up. You'd be going to a family event and you'd drive through Shreveport, Louisiana. I mean, you're Texas boys, and what was that about?
Well, our dad was a pastor. We only got 2 weeks of vacation every July, and we would drive from Dallas to Atlanta to visit family. We never got to go to big vacations, but 3 hours outside of Dallas is Shreveport, and we would get into our 1979 ice blue Caprice Classic station wagon. We would drive, and we would always leave early in the morning. So Jason and I were sleeping in the back, and Dad would wake us up, and he would say, "Hey, boys, wake up. You see that stadium?" And as we're driving down I-20 right there off of the interstate, we look, and there's Shreveport Captain Stadium. It looked like Yankee Stadium to us. And he'd say, "One day, you boys are going to play there together on the same team at the same time. Let's pray." He'd put his hand in the back seat, and we'd put our hands with his, and he would pray, "Lord, I pray one day my boys will get to play in that stadium together." And we did that all the way until we graduated high school. On the way to Atlanta and on the way back from Atlanta, when we passed Shreveport, we would pray that we would get to play together on the same team in that stadium.
Well, I'm going to go back to your careers and what happened, but I mean, God brought that to pass for you. That was an amazing miracle.
He did, and it was miraculous. But what we learned along the way is how to die to a dream.
Yeah.
We recognize that a dream typically goes in 3 stages: the birth of a dream, the death of a dream, and the fulfillment of a dream. And usually when it's fulfilled, it's a little bit different than what it was you originally dreamed. For us, by God's grace, this one played itself out perfect. But I had to learn to die to it early. After our senior year of high school, he was drafted. I was not. My heart was broken. After our junior year of college, he was drafted. I was not. My heart was broken again. But he stayed at Liberty. After our senior year, we both got drafted. Then my second season in, I broke my leg. My third season in, I got released. So this dream that we had of playing professionally together was not going to happen unless God performed a miracle And he's in the miracle working business.
Well, you know, what struck me as I was reading your book was that with a lot of that, you could have been very bitter. You could have been resentful towards your brother. You know, I mean, you guys have maintained your friendship and your relationship through it all. I'm sure you've had moments, because I got some boys too. But how did you do that?
Well, you know, as our dad always taught us and our mom always taught us to really focus on depth in Jesus. And when you focus on depth in Christ, He'll handle the breadth of your life. So you don't have to worry about, oh, I'm not making it to the big leagues, or I don't get this, or I don't get that. You just stay deep. You focus on roots and let the Lord handle your fruits. And that really helped Jason and I not to look at each other. And we were also taught as young kids that competition is meant to build up, not tear down.
Yeah.
So we competed with each other, and we, you know, really tried to make each other better along the way. So that really helped us.
Jason, you could have been bitter. I mean, what kept you from having that happen?
Piggybacking on what he said about competition, is that it is meant to build up and not tear down. And the way that competition can build up and not tear down is you have to remove comparison. So this is something that my mom and my dad both taught me and David both, especially when I, after my senior year, didn't get drafted and he got drafted in high school. And Dad is like, don't compare yourself to David. God has a plan for you.
Yeah.
Now you go deep in Him. And when you remove comparison, this is a lesson for all of us, even today.
Oh, for sure. Yeah.
When you remove comparison, I mean, if you're going to compare yourself to someone who's maybe lower than you, then you grow prideful. If you compare yourself to someone who's maybe higher than you, then you get envious.
Exactly.
Either way, comparison ends up bad. So you got to remove comparison, go deep in the Lord.
Boy, and ultimately, you actually played in Shreveport.
We did.
Who could believe that? That's
I'm
so
telling you,
radical.
I'm telling you, this is not a shameless plug, but the book will blow you away, because Jason gets released.
Yeah.
And I was already traded to the St. Louis Cardinals. I was on the fast track to the big leagues. He came to watch me play in flip-flops and shorts, and the next night, he's on the team with me.
That's unbelievable. Right there. Just forget Shreveport. Just right there. That's unbelievable. Right. But then you guys were even surprised as you realized you were going to Shreveport.
You going to let me?
Yeah, go ahead.
You want to go ahead and finish it out?
Well, we didn't even know. We hadn't even looked at the schedule. So here Jason signs. He's in the stands one day.
Joking.
He's in. No, well, I'm just taking over now at this point. I have to do these things.
That's what the oldest gets.
But we're in the dugout together the next night, and then Jason ends up getting a pinch hit that night and hits a double. Hadn't seen a live pitch in 4 months. We go back in the clubhouse. The newspaper is there interviewing him, and our manager walks in and says, "Hey guys, everybody be to the field tomorrow morning at 9 a.m. Shreveport's 3 hours away."
Did
we
your
had to look at
jaws
the
drop?
schedule.
Oh, it did. And you know, we only had 4 games left of that season. And so David and I just looked at each other like, only God could do something like this.
It was amazing.
Yeah.
And when you close the book, you realize God is on the throne. He's working behind the scenes, even when you can't see Him, and you can trust Him.
But let me say one last thing. When David and I got to Shreveport for that very first day, we got there early to the field before the team. We found our way onto the field. We got down on our knees in center field, and we put our hands out to the Lord and said, God, only you could do something like this. And we turned around and we looked, and there our dad was up in the stands. He had come to the game early, and he was praising the Lord. He said, guys, only God could do something like this. So we had that moment together, the 3 of us, and with my mom and little brother and sister in tow. And it really is a miracle.
It really is. Well, the book is full of wise counsel and some real sacrificial choices that were life-changing, and you need to read it. Benham's book is called Miracle in Shreveport, and just as the cover says, this is the stuff of movies. It's a great read. So pick up a copy for yourself and friends. Father's Day coming up. Perfect. You can also hear more of David and Jason's story in our social exclusive interview on Facebook. If you'd like to watch that, just go to facebook.com/700club. Thanks, guys. Always great to have you here.
Thanks for having us.